So when you're uh, writing an economic story, you follow all the procedures that are involved in doing storytelling in journalism. Okay, let's now we're on a point where to understand the economy itself. What is the economy and the source of news? So we yesterday we said an economy rather is the total sum of millions of things we do. Everything happens, and we said it's not a science, according to this author. So the economists measure all things that we do, such selling, money, what government do to help or hinder this, okay? What we buy, what we sell, what we create or make, what we grow, all those combined. These, once you measure them, so it's about measuring them, right? All these social activities, human activities, okay? And then when you measure them and you find an average about, you find you value them at national level. And then you divide how much Tia gets, how much Chance gets, how much I get. Equal, isn't it? That's called the GDP, gross domestic product. It's just theoretical, isn't it? Doesn't mean that if they say, for example, the Malawi GDP is, just an example, is $10 in a year. Everybody, if they share the money, everybody will be getting $10, eh? But that's not how it works. Because some are getting $100 million, eh? Others are getting nothing. But that's what belongs to Malawi. Okay. So economists measure all these things and give them names such as gross domestic product. They also measure inflation. Inflation is the rising of prices. Eh? But when prices are going down, called deflation. Eh? Fiscal balance, that is how much you're able to spend against what you have. Eh? Okay. And governments and others, such as businesses, trade unions, which try to influence these issues. Okay. So at the same time, ordinary people influence those things, like us. We do influence. If you go to a salon, that person will be happy, get some money, isn't it? So if how many of you go to that, the owner of salon gets more money. But if you say it's expensive or that you don't like it, that person is affected, isn't it? Because that person where she's buying the mesh is also affected. She won't be buying more mesh or other things because related to the salon. So the chain goes on. But the most important person to influence is the consumer. Okay. So economics is to do with all kinds of human action, ranging from rational planning, saving, and investment to irrational greed, fear, and corruption. So, what kinds of stories come out of it? What kinds of stories are we going? We are sort of repeating, isn't it? The most common stories are to do with the current health of the economy and the outlook. When we say the economy is healthy, it means are you able to produce enough for as a country against what you spend? If you spend more than what you make, you produce, the economy is not healthy. Okay. These are called economic indicators, which include such measures as GDP is also an economic measure. Inflation, unemployment rate, fiscal balance, trade, and current account balance. So governments, as well as many domestic and international institutions, usually publish this information regularly. Now, as an economist, you need to understand, so rather, as a journalist who's going to be reporting about economics, you must understand this. Eh? But then add value to that. Don't copy and paste. Eh? Okay, so you will be doing this one by seeking comment and analysis from experts. Real people involved, such as workers, farmers, managers, and investors. And then concentrate on that part of the story that answers why and what. So if something is published elsewhere, go and ask why and then what, isn't it? What this will mean to the reader, always. Why and what will this mean to the reader? That's why you need to have notes for news, eh? And not just what are the numbers. Okay. Other economic stories include the discovery and depletion of natural resources, population growth and movement. Discovery and depletion of natural resources, population growth and movement such as migrant labor and urbanization. Literacy and education. Literacy and education are important. It also tells the skills that the country has for its people. Are they skilled enough to produce? Do we have skilled engineers to produce materials or produce products that can be exported from our? Do we have skilled journalists that can tackle corruption issues and report them effectively? Okay. Changing cultures of savings and debt. That is to say, are people more interested to save today than how are they paying their debt? If you give me your money, are you sure you get it tomorrow? Or you'll be giving excuses? So applies to institutions. Then we also have economic conditions of neighboring countries and the rest of the world that have a big impact. Okay. So these are the kinds of stories you have to be thinking about. Also, government and economic policy. That's a source where you can get. Governments are important to economics and business for two reasons. Okay. Number one, they are the biggest participants in the economy. Okay. They spend more money than anyone else, even the biggest businesses. The government. Most journalists, we should know what is government and the economic policy. And then you can pin down your questions or your investigation based on what you know about government economic policy. Second, they decide how the economy should be run. Yes, government decide how economy should be run through increased or decreasing taxes, employment policies, and others. So in some countries, governments actually run the economy through state-owned enterprises and decisions made by various ministries. Okay, we know there are mixed economy. Then we have market economy. Then we have state-controlled economies, like communist countries. Okay, where or others could call that command economy. There's a bit of economics is important there too. So when we say command economy, economy that is controlled by the central government, even determining prices and the likes. In Malawi, you may think it's a market economy between market economy and command economy in the sense that government can control prices like in ADMAC maize, isn't it? But other products are left free. Okay. So when governments run most things, we speak of command economy. When they leave it to business, we call that a market economy. So most countries have a mix of both. Where do you think Malawi is? Tia, do you agree with that? So read about economy, isn't it? You also think in Lane, there's economics module, isn't it? In first year, you get that. So when you're reading that one, think about it and try to align it with journalistic understanding. So in a command economy, the government sets output goals and state enterprises to meet them. When we say output goals, means what to produce. Okay. It also sets prices and the exchange rate. The kwacha and the dollar, the kwacha and this. This should be the exchange rate. And tells state-owned banks whom to lend to and at what interest rates. The banks are owned by the government. Lend out money, the interest is this one, not market interest, isn't it? Okay, and give to this and that. So this often leads to a power of black economy. That's, well, this can happen, but there are black economy. Black economy is that economy that is not sanctioned by government. Like we see people at ShopRite, the opposite, isn't it? They're exchanging money. That's a black economy. Your official sub be doing this one in Bureau de Change. You say, oh, that one? You call it Bureau de Change, but that's supposed to be Bureau de Change. It's French, okay? And but people are forced to do that or not. The black market thrives where governments try to suppress or try to control something. Okay. In which business and traders conduct illegal transaction and so-called black market rates or prices. That's really black market or illegal transaction or black market rates and prices. If it's not permitted, then usually the result is a shortage of something, whether it's food, goods, or foreign exchange. So if the black market is not there, you still then have a shortage of something. In a market economy, the government manages what is called macroeconomic policy. Okay? Macro means big. There are three parts to this. Okay? One, physical, three, monetary, and that's one, physical, two, monetary, and three, exchange rate policy. So the first, that's the fiscal policy. Is about what to tax and by how much. The government has written taxes for this. Government will be taxing tobacco imported by this. And then what to spend the money on. So once we have taken this money, buy drugs, pay salaries for civil servants. Okay. So a loose fiscal policy either lowers taxes or increases spending with the aim of boosting total spending in the economy. What it means is that the government can lower taxes. It means more people will be willing to pay, because it's just lower to pay. And then increase spending. To increase spending, it means there's more money in circulation and more money to spend for the economy. You should appreciate this because that's what you have. Why do we have less money circulating or more money circulating? So government must spend on something like on projects. It means people will be employed, isn't it? The money will be circulating and they'll be using that money to buy products elsewhere, so to boost production in the country. But the government will say, don't import. If you import, you pay fine. Not a fine as such. Maybe you pay more taxes on imported goods than which are produced locally. The idea is to encourage people to buy locally. Okay. So a tight fiscal policy raises taxes or lower spending with the aim of reducing total spending in the economy. There are two differences here. There can be, government can have a loose fiscal spending, LOOSE, That means reduce taxes and increase spending. Or a tight fiscal policy, raising taxes and cutting spending. Okay. So the monetary policy is about how much money to print or allow banks to lend to customers. The first one was fiscal policy. Now we're talking about monetary policy. So it's about how much money should the government print. And how much should it allow banks to lend to customers? So the exchange rate policy, the third one, is about how it sets the rate at which the country's currency can be exchanged for another currency. I know the kwacha has collapsed against the dollar, for example, or has gained value. So governments allow any one of these three policies to become imbalanced for too long can cause an economic crisis. So there is time, space for that. Okay. In addition to taxation, government can raise revenue through borrowing. So government has money through taxes, but can also do that through borrowing, either from the capital markets or banks. International bodies such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF. So government can borrow locally. The World Bank or even their own people. Usually in the end, the loan has to be paid back from taxation too. There's no means. The government does not have business, isn't it? Does government have business? Huh? Yes. But as a journalist, that's what you have to say. How many loans has government been able to pay back? Yeah? How? Then we have to dig that. Eh? We have to have evidence. As a journalist, that's what people are waiting for us to do. Does the government really pay back loans? Yeah? Where's the evidence? So for us to pursue that one, we need to understand the basics of this, isn't it? If you have that one, government hasn't paid settled loans for the past 20 years. It's a big story with evidence. Eh? This loan matured in 2010. Government hasn't paid. This loan matured in 2008. This loan matured. Okay. So usually the loan has to be paid through taxation. So in fact, every baby born daily, yes, pays more for goods and services throughout his lifetime and perhaps the next. We take a loan today to be paid in 50 years. We're dead. So who is paying? Those who are being born late, isn't it? Okay. So the most frequent cause of economic crisis is when people and businesses or the government borrow too much and then can't pay it back. That's leads to an economic crisis. Yeah. It is the role of the central bank to keep interest rates at the right level to result in a balance between savings and borrowing. The central bank must balance between savings and borrowings. So if the economy is not moving well, it's not going, they say the economy is in a crisis. Just know that the government or the people or the businesses, the people, the businesses, or the government, they have borrowed more than. Yeah, that's what's happening. Yes, we do that. We need some discipline. For example, it's not only that we need to cut spending. The government first, and the people, even at level, at family level, at individual level. One of them is that one. Yeah, even reducing the civil service, the number of employees in government. If you can't pay 120,000 people, maintain 70,000. Yeah? Yeah. All those. So restructure the civil service, But another one is you might have enough resources, but because of corruption,
Yeah.
the money disappears. Just like you're drawing water in a pail with a lot of holes. So, but the central bank should ensure also that there's a balance between savings and borrowing. Okay. For developing countries like Malawi, where we are, a government policy is related to growth and development. So what the government policy is, it will determine growth and development. Okay. What the government does and what it allows or forbids its citizens and businesses to do can lead to stagnation. That's government say, don't export maize or export maize. Yeah. Okay. That can either stagnate or can leave people in poverty. You have grown your own maize, so don't sell it elsewhere. Okay. And so the government policy, we must understand as an economist, as rather journalist who's going to put on economics, understand the government policy on economics. Do we have growing poverty in Malawi because of government policy? Is that good or not being implemented? Eh? Yes. So we say government takes its revenue from taxes, borrowing. Another one can be from sales of government assets like companies. So government sold its companies or assets. Eh? Yes. So this is often called privatization. Privatization is when the government is selling its own assets. Okay. So privatization takes place when the government decides to stop running businesses and allows the private sector take over. Okay. Right. So we see that the government decides to stop running business and allows the private sector to take over. That's so the main way of accomplishing this is for the government to sell the companies it owns, a process known as privatization. I think most of you maybe were too young, we're not even born. We're not born, I should say, when government was busy selling companies for public companies, but they were told
Companies what?
government companies.
To be
Yes, to people that's to take over business. Yeah. Okay. We had, for example, we had companies like MDC, right, Development Corporation, got disbanded. Several companies, eh? Yes, they went to private hands. Okay. So apart from generating revenue, the government is keen to sell shares in a company. Government can sell shares in a company. If a company is okay, they are being heavily subsidized. You know, what subsidize to add more money to make something cheaper, isn't it? Like fertilizer, government adds money for its own so that the price is reduced, isn't it? So you buy a fertilizer at 15,000 instead of 75,000. The US government is paying how much? Limiting the cost to over 60,000. Yeah? Okay. They feel private management can deliver goods and services effectively or efficiently at cheaper costs. So government thinks that if a private company takes over, it will be now easier to deliver. It will be cheaper. Eh? It will be cost effective. Okay. They want people to own a share in a state enterprise and supplement their income when the company shares percentage of their profits with all shareholders. Okay. So when the government involves government is sells its shares, like in ESCOM, they can put there at the my stock exchange and say, anybody who wants to be part of ESCOM, can you buy a share? Eh? So the share, they say, after a year, when in every 100, you'll be getting 30 kwacha. Eh? But the share can grow in value or decline. Eh? Yeah. So as long as you buy a share, that's it means private people, private individuals are involved in running that company. They have a say, or they share some profits. Okay. However, because privatization often results in greater efficiency, okay, let me say this perspective where they say privatizations often result in greater efficiency, they also cause job loss. Huh? Job loss. Oh yeah, privatization. Well, they will simply say, some of these jobs you don't need them. We only need a few jobs. We don't need all the jobs. Okay. Let me say one thing. When we're talking about economics here, we're talking about the economics from the Western perspective, isn't it? Western world of of democracies. If you went to Russia or to Japan, not Japan as such, China, they would disagree with some of these things. They would say, no, that's not how we run. That's not how we run economics, or the economy. They will tell you different as well. So when we are saying this one, we're talking about this economics perspective or economic perspective. We're talking from the Western world, US, UK, France, Germany, those and democracies. But if you go to countries like North Korea, command economy. China, command partly market. You find others believe that government should control the economy entirely. Okay? I just want to tell you that. So, okay. So here they are saying privatizations often result in greater efficiency. So they also cause job losses. Can someone tell me the relationship between an economy or privatization bring greater efficiency but cause job loss? How does job loss relate to greater efficiency? How if a company is sold and privatized, isn't it? It has it. It is
What did you say privatization is? The selling of assets or
public assets or government assets, yes. Private individuals. That's privatization. So okay, okay,
so entitled to job loss.
yes,
Job.
yeah, job loss. But they said when there's a job loss, it means there is greater efficiency in that company. On that, when the job losses, it means greater efficiency is attained. So I say, what's the relationship here?
Towards the company. So it's not often that if the company is sold, the same people who are employed in the company will be employed. The other company will need other employees. So those who are working there, they will be removed so that they can bring with their own people. So it will lead those people to be unemployed.
That's one. I agree. So you look at they might say those who have been working here were either lacked skills That's where you say literacy and education. Or they can simply, another way, they can simply reduce the number. So some of these are not wanted here. Okay. Right. So it is important to look at whether the government has safety net for those workers who are put out on the streets. So government must decide, where do we put these people who have lost their jobs, isn't it? Yeah. There must be safety nets, such as giving them loans to start their own businesses and others. Okay. Another point to note is that the promised rewards don't always materialize. For instance, if there's no peer or regulatory framework to encourage competition in the marketplace, the dangers are acute. Okay. Uh, some people can manipulate. If you go to some of these new companies, you find people, the size they are getting. Some are getting 100,000. They say, no, if you want to stay with us, get a pay cut. From 100,000, you'll be getting 50,000. Or you go. You see that? Okay. In Russia, they have given an example here. For example, many companies went from being badly run government-owned enterprises to badly run private-owned enterprises. So you can allow a company from government, which was badly run, but it goes through in the private hand. It's also being badly run. Okay. The new private sector companies often still run as monopolies, where no more efficient, didn't deliver better. They just copy the way government was doing. Yeah. Okay. Let's take an example of bus depots. They were in the hands of city council, isn't it? But when they went into private hand, they were even just as dirty. They were just the same. No change. So to change what can be a complicated and often politically challenging process, it is vital to know not just how companies are privatized, but as why they can fail. So as a journalist, you need to follow up. Are these companies succeeding or not? Okay. Then what kind of stories can come out from this? Because everything we need to understand, we should also know it. From privatization, for example, from government raising revenue, what kind of stories can come out of this one? Okay. As a journalist, then you're thinking, where does that from? Or am I just listening from whatever government tells us? Am I just a parrot? To avoid being a parrot, that's why we are doing this, to understand at least some level, and then the rest you can read. Okay. So the most important are when governments announce what taxes they would demand and what they will spend on money. Find out if government has announced taxes. You can ask, what will you spend that money on? So this is usually done in the formal document called the budget. So journalists play an important role in reporting in detail about exactly what goes into and comes out of the government coffers, where it comes from and where it goes to, and who wins and who loses. Do we know what goes and comes out of the government coffers? Where does it come from? And where does it go? And who wins when it comes in? Or who loses when it comes out? So, to get this one, means you have to understand how the budget performs, how the budget works, how it is made. So the government's conduct affects the functioning of the economy, not just its own role in the economy, and the whole economy. It is therefore important for journalists to write stories about what kinds of policies the government is pursuing and what it means for growth and development, inflation, the exchange rate, and so on. The government's role, rather, the journalist's role or job is to shine a spotlight on all expenditures as well as on all sources of revenue. Expenditure. What's government spending? What's the revenue? Shine no spots on those, whether from taxation, natural resources, or international loans, to provide as much transparency as possible. Ideally, a close look at the budget will help show whether government policies are favoring the rich or the poor, and will highlight potential cases of corruption and mismanagement, if you can appreciate and understand the budget. If governments borrowing money from the World Bank, the IMF, or other such bodies, there may be specific conditions attached to the loan. So if government borrows money, don't just clap hands or just go like this. Find out what are the conditions and whether they are being fulfilled, like you said. And we're really paying back the loans. Okay. Does the loan and its condition benefit the government or the people? Okay. Okay. So that was about the source of the news as the economy. But don't forget the human angle. We So you can get news generally from the economy. That was number one. At number two, we have these are general, but they don't have a name, but you can combine them. Where do you get? So other major news producing sectors in business journalism. Let's go to banking and finance. Okay, so banks are the largest and sometimes the most influential institutions in the country. Okay, so that's where you borrow money. That's where we keep money, isn't it? So farmers can borrow money from there. Companies can borrow money from banks. So banks provide a safe place for people to save money and lend money to people who show that in future they will be able to pay it back. Not everybody, isn't it? So you can borrow money from the bank or save money there. So anytime of this one, they try to make a profit. They don't give you, you don't 10,000, 10 million, you pay back 10 million. They make a profit through what? How do banks make profits? Yeah? Interest, isn't it? For lending money, isn't it? Okay. So of course things often go wrong with banks. That's why government supervise and regulate. Often very badly, which is sometimes things can go wrong with the banks. Yeah? So government also supervises or supervise the banks and regulate them. Supervision means following what they're doing. Are they doing what they're supposed to do, isn't it? Regulate means say, don't do A, B, C, D. So at first banks were okay. So the banks can determine the direction of the economy as well. Okay. So almost every country in the world today sees the need for a safe banking system, and governments now encourage the growth of the financial sector. It's important. You cannot have a country without the financial sector. So, because why is the financial sector important? Why do you think it's important? Chance.
think it contributes to the economy of the country by lending money to people so that they can do business.
Yeah, providing loans, loan provisions, isn't it? Okay, okay. Um, the examples you can read, but the banks also have their own problems, which we need to understand. They sometimes like complain Malay that their interests are too high, isn't it? Or they're too stringent. They sometimes don't give everyone money. They choose who to. Okay. So what kinds of stories come out of this, the banking sector? Okay. Journalists who cover banks should look for the current state or changes in the foreign things because this might make stories. First, how many banks are there in the country? In Malaya, how many banks do we have? How many banks? As a journalist, you cannot say there are a lot. You haven't, as no number. How many are there? There are 9 banks in Malaya, okay? 9. Yeah. Mm. How many are local? How many are in foreign? Mm. Which are these? Which are these for? You see, so you need to know to have that information, Like Standard Bank, we know it's falling. My back is falling, And just a moment. Okay, so guys, so we should also know who owns these banks. Are they government or private-owned banks? Okay. How much money does each bank have in deposits? We need to know that. Hey, how much money does National Bank have in deposits? Standard Bank. We know National Bank is number 1. It's leading. Standard Bank is number 2. But the biggest bank which has the national presence is FDH Bank. It's found in every district. Okay. How does the bank raise deposits from locals, foreigners? What rates of interest do they pay on your savings or fixed deposits? Okay. Does the interest rate change if it is local or foreign money? Do they offer higher interest rates for other people who are in there? So many things. What is each bank's loan portfolio? That's the total and type of loans made. Are the banks lending more to local or foreigners? And what at what interest rates or at what rate of interest do they lend? Okay. So there's so many questions you have to find out from the banks, is it? Yeah. Do people use cash to transact or checkbooks? How do banks serve people in remote areas through ATM? Okay. Is it offering any new products, loans, or services? What other assets does the bank have? Okay. The small entrepreneurs repay more often than big corporates. Okay. Do they find it difficult to collect loans because the companies have gone bad, not managed properly, the sector they have lent? Huh? Yes, not once, but pursuing, isn't it? For example, you can that Do they find it difficult to collect loans because the companies have gone bad, not managed properly? This can be a story. Eh? Yes. The small entrepreneurs pay more often than big corporates. It can be a story, isn't it? What? So it doesn't mean that you call all these you uh, stuff them in one story. No, you break down. Eh? Yes. But as you are reporting with time, it becomes your beat. Everything is on the fingertips. You no longer story just start flowing. Okay. Okay. Um, there are also many stories about government policy and supervision. So that was about banks. Now we're talking about government policy and supervision of banks. Hmm? There are complaints from the general public about high interest rates or difficult to get a loan from a bank. What the government policy say about that? Eh? Is government supervising these banks? Okay. So for companies, every country has companies both large and small that play a significant role. Okay. What I want to say here, companies borrow from a bank at a variable interest rate. It can be a fixed rate. It can be selling shares. Companies have business plans that they submit to banks. Okay. So how much money the company makes from what it does, that's gross profit. So the government will also be supervising companies. Companies in relation to banking, but also companies in the way they perform. Uh-huh. This company is stealing from people. This company is doing ABCD. Eh? Is the government able to intervene? Is the government supervising them? Eh? Okay. How is the company raising its money? Okay. And from there, what kind of stories can come out? But for companies, they always defend. They think what they're doing is quite interesting, eh? But not necessarily all the readers. So what is interesting for readers, however, is for the readers when you're writing about companies, isn't it? You're writing about new products, their products. Do they have any products? Eh? Okay. The products we buy, for example, in Malawi, how many do you think are produced locally? Eh? Eh. Some are just branded. They will take products from Tanzania and brand them in Malawi as they are produced in Malawi. How are they promoting and selling these products? Marketing, eh? Are there new jobs being created by these companies? Like the Chinese, when they opened that company, are there any jobs being created? Okay. Or are the old jobs lost? Do the company add anything to the economy? Eh? Is there any corruption or connection between the company executives and politicians or government officials? So you have to say, it appears this is a friend of the president. This is a friend of the ministers. Okay. So journalists who cover companies need to look for changes in the following things because this might make stories. Who owns it? Who runs it? Who they employ? The money they run it with. Uh-huh. To know the owner is very important. And then who is running it? The money they make from it, what they make. You just see some people, some companies, they look small, but you find the owners, they're looking quite rich. Eh? You tend to wonder. Okay. Okay. let's do say that when you are reporting about companies because they are private, be careful. Most of them become private. You face a danger. It's risky for a journalist. Don't think it is. You just go there and they will welcome you. You're investigating about them. They have something to hide. They will give you something cosmetic. They will write a press release. Um, you know a press release? Ever heard about a press release? Okay. A statement written by a company to be sent, or an institution written by a company as a news story to be published by media houses. Okay, you write for them. They can either publish it or not. Okay. Okay. So,